welcome back to the class. How are you all? How is everything is going on? So, have you watched the last session in which we have just started the introduction and we have seen some of the properties? So, have you seen that? Any question? Any doubt? Have you posted your question, your queries over the forum? That's good. So, my dear students, now we are going to start the second part of this chapter, and after this chapter is going to be over. Okay. So, my dear student, please look at this chapter very carefully and start learning this chapter. Actually, I was about to say revising. I was like, oh my god, why is revising is going on? First of all, we have to read, then we'll revise it. Exactly. So, shall we start now? Okay, so the chapter which we were doing, it was about the sorting material into the groups. And as in the last session, I have discussed so many things about this chapter, and we have seen some of the properties like appearance, luster, dullness, and what else? Solubility, hardness. So we have seen all of these properties, but student, it's not like that. We are having only this much of properties. On the basis of that, we can separate the materials, but we can have we have more properties as well. So here are the list of these properties, so you can see. So first of all, it is the floating and sinking in water, like which of the material can float and and which material can sink in the water. Transparency, conductivity of heat and electricity, magnetism, and now why we need to group all of these material. Okay, material. Fine, it happens sometime. Okay, so these all are the properties, student, which we are going to study today. Oh, sorry. It happened. Okay. So my dear student, you'll say, ma'am, like why we are studying all of these properties? Because students, we are having different material, and all of these materials are having different property. Exactly. So that's why we required all of these list of the properties, on which on the basis of that we can separate out all of the materials, or we can sort them easily. Fine, student. That is why we required all of these properties. So now starting with our properties. Okay, now first of all, it's about floating and sinking of material. Like some of the materials we are having in our nature that can be float or that can be sink, and all of them are insoluble in nature. Now, my dear student, if I ask you what is solubility and what is the soluble material and insoluble material, now you are able to answer that question, because you know what's the solubility is, what the soluble and the non-soluble means. Exactly, the substance which can soluble, we call them as the soluble substance, which are not soluble, or we call them as the non-soluble one or the insoluble one. So the student, as I can say, that the soluble materials are soluble in nature. So when we add them into water or any other thing, so they are going to be dissolved. That is why neither they are going to sink or float. So for example, salt. When you mix the salt into water, so what happens, student? That the salt is going to be mixed completely. Have you ever seen that the salt is floating or sinking in the water? Exactly, no. It's happened just because of the material is insoluble in nature. For example, you can see that these are the two things, float and sink. Now student, float is having different meaning and the sink is having different meaning. If I ask you what is float, that means you can say that it will start floating over the surface of water, and sink, that means it is going to be down into the water. Okay, deep down into the water. For example, student, as you can see that these are the leaves petal. Okay, these are the leaf. Okay, and you can see, student, the leaf is very lighter in nature. They are very light. Exactly, they don't have that much mass. They are very light in nature, due to which, student, if you try to add them into the water, as well as they are insoluble, can you dissolve leaf into the water? Exactly, no. And even though you know what's the weight of the leaf, they are very light in nature. So due to that, student, you can say that the leaf are very lighter in nature and as well as insoluble in nature, so they just start floating over the water. Fine. But as in this picture, okay, I'll show you again. Like this coin is present here. Okay, now this is a coin in the water, and you have seen that now this person is adding water into it. Fine, now you can see here. After adding the water, this coin, which is heavier in weight, and even though insoluble in nature, so it is not floating, it is sinking in nature, it is sinking in water. Exactly, student. For example, if there is any ship, Okay, ship. Ship, not sheep. I'm talking about ship, but even though sheep will also have the same thing if we talk about. So, student, whenever there is whenever we talk about is, oh, sorry, what I was telling you, I was telling you about floating and sinking now. Okay, so just let it be here because I got confused at that point. So, okay, we'll talk about here. So, the student, the substance which are insoluble in nature. So, we are having the properties that either they can float or they can sink. So the material which are very lighter in nature, they start floating over the water, and the material which are very heavier in nature, they just got float. You can say that they just get sink into the water. Okay, so that's the thing. Like if I give you another example, for example, here for the material, it could be wood cork as well. है ना? Wood cork is also very lighter in nature. It will just float over the surface of the water. It is not going to be sink down because it is very lighter in nature. But if I tell you for the oh, sorry, I'm writing it in the. Okay, so I'll just write down it again. So, my dear students, like what we are talking about, so we are talking about the materials which are insoluble in nature. So, first, that is the either they are going to be float or sink. As I told you, that the soluble materials are going to be completely mixed up, so they will not either float or sink. So it's just the property of the insoluble material, like depending upon their weight, either they are lighter in nature or we can say that heavier in nature. So they either float or sink into the water. Exactly. So that's how we can see. So like float. Float means student either the material or the substance is going to be float over the surface of the water. For example, leaf, wood cork. Okay, so these are the material which are insoluble. That means they are not going to be soluble in water, and it is like it is insoluble in nature. And even though they are lighter, like they are very lighter in nature, so that is why they just start floating over the water. And even though student, if I talk about the sink, that which kind of material can sink down into the water. So, for example, there is coin, and what else I can say? Coin and there can be many example comb, because comb will also not float over the water, and there are so many things like stones. So these are the materials which are again insoluble, but the difference is that they are heavier in nature. Okay, one is lighter and one is heavier in nature. So due to that student, some of the materials will float over the water and some of them will sink in the water. So that's how we can separate the material over the floating and the sinking of material. Fine. So but it is just a property of the insoluble one. If someone asks you like salt can float or sink, exactly no, because it is completely soluble in water, so it is not going to be float or sink. Got my point? So for the other property is this. Now transparency. Now my dear students, transparency is of the, you know this thing, that the transparency is what? Like if you are having one glass sheet and if you can see, if you can see through it, so we call it as transparency. Exactly, student. So the transparency is also one of the properties, student. You can say that the type of the material from which you can see, through which you can see properly. For example, glass we are having like glass doors, so through that glass doors we are able to see that thing, so we call that type of material as the transparent material. So you can say that student, that the transparency is the property of the transparent material through which we can see the thing clearly. Glass doors are there, glass windows are there, through which we can see clearly that if I'm sitting here and here it is glass, so I can see through that. So that is why we call that glass as the transparent material, and the transparency is the property of the transparent material. Fine. So that's the one thing. Now student, we are having two different type of material as well. One is the okay, just give me a minute. So one is the translucent, okay, and another one is the opaque. Now see student, what's the difference between these three? Now you can see from this picture, that from this transparent you can see the face of this person. Exactly. So what I have told you about the transparent is that when you are able to see something from that glass or from that particular material, so you call that material as the transparent one. So from this glass you are able to see the face of this person, so that is why it is transparent. But from the translucent you can see, like you can partly see, like it is somewhat blur in nature, but yes, you can easily, like you can get some idea, yes, someone is standing there. So such type of material which can have the partly transparent in nature and partly opaque in nature, we call them as the translucent material, from which you can't visible clearly. Okay, got my point? Like from which you can't clearly. So but you will get the idea, okay, someone is standing there, so that's why you call it as the translucent one. For example, student, we are, some people use fiberglass fiber, no, fiber not glass, fiber sheet doors are there. From that fiber sheet door, student, what happened, that you will come to know that okay, someone is standing there, but you can't clearly visible that because it is translucent in nature. Fine. And if I talk about opaque, now this is the material and you can't see the face of this person through that material. So such type of material from which you can't see that what is what is behind that particular material, so we call it as the opaque. For example, wooden doors, sorry, you'll say, ma'am, what is wooden doors? For example, students, like when your room door is like closed, and if it is of wooden, so made up of wood, so you can't see that whether your mother is standing next to that door or your father is standing next to door. For example, like if we are living always, like all of us, we are living in house. So if someone comes to our house, so they just ring the bell, and we are having wooden gates or the iron gates, so we can't see them that okay, who has came to the our house. Okay, exactly. So what we did, like we use some kind of camera or some kind of, like we have one kind of hole, through that we can see that who has came to our house. Okay, because sometime it can happen, it might be some kind of thief, it might be some kind of, maybe your teacher has visited, maybe I have visited your house. So what you will do, you will not allow to come in, because I'll make you make what I can do, that I can give your whole performance sheet to your parents. Exactly, we can have a kind of PTM. So you'll see, okay, ma'am is standing there now. Now what I can do is, and I'm not going to open the door, otherwise she'll come and she'll complain about me to my parents. So that's a student. Wooden doors or the iron doors are opaque in nature. That means you can't see that who, the, like behind that gate or to the next side of that door, who is standing. Exactly, it's not only about doors, the materials through which we can't see the, like what is standing behind that, so we can't, so we say such type of material as the opaque one. Exactly. For example, student, like if what I can say else, like car, houses. Exactly, if someone is standing behind your house, so how you are going to see that? Exactly. So the material, so these are the three properties, student. The transparent one, through which you can see very, very clearly. For example, glass door, like the glass which we uses in our specs, also in our spectacles, so that glasses are also what we can see through it. Exactly. If those glasses are going to be translucent or the opaque ones, how we are going to use that specs? Exactly. So the specs of the glass which we use in our specs, they are transparent in nature, because we can we can see through it very clearly. Okay, translucent, from where you can partly, like partly opaque and partly transparent, like you will able to find out that okay, someone's standing there, but exactly you will not come to know. So maybe like you are having translucent gate and I was standing next to your door and you open it, you thought okay, your sister has came, but I was there, so what will happen now? Now I'll enter your house and I'll just talk to your parents. So that's how it could happen if you're having translucent. So always try to have opaque door. Okay, so now what with the opaque door is, like if opaque door or opaque material, you can't able, like you will not able to see through that. So this is the three properties, on the basis of that you can divide the material. For example, transparent is glass door, translucent is fiber sheet kind of doors, opaque one is the wooden doors or the iron doors. So that's how. Okay, this is the another property for sorting the materials. Now the another property come here, it is the conductivity of heat and electricity. So my dear students, like conductivity of heat and electricity is also a very important property, from which we'll come to know that whether which of the material are able to conduct the electricity and heat, and which are the material which are not able to conduct the heat and electricity. For example, students, first of all, what are the conductors? Okay, for that you should know what are the conductors and the insulators. So students, conductors are those type of material which are having the ability to conduct heat and electricity. Exactly, that means through which so what happened, like through them current can pass easily, and that's how we are getting electricity and heat in our houses. For example, student, copper wire are there. Copper wire we use in our houses, so the copper wire is the conductor of electricity, like current will flow through it and we are getting electricity. And even though they are also, they are heatable in nature. For example, gold is that. And even though what you can do is you can do one thing, like you can light up one candle, and you are having one iron rod, not very big but very small one, and you start heating it, so from the one end. So what will happen, after some time you will feel that the other end of the iron is also going to be start heating, because iron is a metal and the metals are the good conductor of heat and electricity. Okay, and why they are, we'll discuss in your higher classes. Okay, so the materials which can conduct heat and current, exactly, they are called as the conductors, and which do not conduct the electricity or heat, so we call them as the insulators. For example, wood, as you can see here, that is the copper wire, iron, and oh sorry, gold. Okay, and insulator like plastic, wood. So all these are the materials which are insulators of heat and electricity. For example, that means electricity or the current or the heat will not allow to pass through it. For example, students, whenever you have seen in your kitchen also, like the fry pan or the that kind of material which we use to heat, so when we are having such material, so their handle are having some kind of wooden substance or the plastic substance. So why we use that? Because students, when we are heating such particular utensil, so it will get heat up, because it is made up of either of the iron or any other material, so due to it will get heat up. Now if we try to hold it, and if it is also of metal or like that, so we and the heat will go pass through it, and we'll feel hot, like hot, sorry, not hot, hot, and we can't touch it, exactly, or either our hand can get severe burn. So that's why, student, that part is covered with the plastic, because plastic will not allow, or the wooden, because they will not allow the heat to pass through them, and that's why we can easily touch that part. So that's why, student, the insulators are used of that part where we don't require the passage of electricity or current, whereas the conductors are used at that part where we require the conductivity. For example, in our houses, for the electricity purpose, we require the copper wire, so that the electricity can pass, the current can pass through it, and we can get the electricity. Exactly. And for example, the utensils which we use, they are made up of metal. Why? Or the iron, because we want that the food can get heat. Exactly. And this is the conductor and insulator. And one more thing, student, we human beings are the conductor or insulators. So exactly, student, we human beings are conductor of electricity. Why? If by chance your hand touches with any of the wire or through which the current is passing on, so you will get the electric shock. Exactly, people can get the electric shock. Now why? Because the current can pass through their body, and that's how they get them. Like we can get the electric shock. That is why human beings are the conductor of electricity. But what happens, student, whenever if such situation occur that someone is getting electric shock, or someone is like someone is there and who is getting injured because of it, so what you can do is you can use either the plastic instrument or any wood lock, so that you can hit that person and you can separate that person from that electrical appliance, so that it will get saved from the electric shock. Because student, electric shock is very dangerous to life. If a person is continuously in the touch with that electric wire, he might can lose his life. Okay, he might can to the stage of the death, because it is very dangerous. That is why, student, if any of the time you find such condition, as you are very small, but if in your house is something like that, you can tell your mother or father that something is going on here, and you can use either the wood lock or the plastic, so that you can hit that person, so that he will get like contactless with that wire. Because what happened now, the flow of the current will get stopped, and that person can be safe. Okay, so that's how. So that on the basis of heat and electricity, we can separate out the materials that which can conduct the electricity or the heat, we call them as the conductor, and which do not, we call them as the insulators, as you can see here. Fine, students. Okay, now the next property is the magnetism. That what we talk about magnetism. Magnetism is the kind of the force, or is the type of the properties which is exerted by the magnets, and the substance which are attracted to by the magnet, they are called as the magnetic one, and the substance which get repelled by the magnet, we call them as the what? Non-magnetic one. Okay, so what happens, student, in magnetism, there is the property of the magnet that they attract or repel some kind of material. Okay, for example, if we apply the magnet near to the iron nails, like in this picture, it is the iron nails, student. Iron nails are here, and I don't know why it is like, if there is the, this is the magnet part, and this magnet will try to attract the iron. Okay, iron nails, because iron is having the property iron. Okay, this Fe represent the iron. You will get to know when you are going to higher classes that iron is represented by Fe symbol. So that's how, student, this Fe is going to be attracted towards the magnet, and they will stick to that magnet part. Have you seen, like, have you done this thing at your home also, like whether the metal part, the iron part, wherever the magnet is going to find out, it is going to be attract towards that. So that's the, student, the material which are attracted towards the magnet, so we call them as the magnetic substances, because the magnetism is the property. For example, magnet is exerting the force over the nails, so that the iron nails are getting attracted toward that magnet, and they are going to stick it like that. So that's why there is the difference between the materials which are attracted towards the magnet, and there are some materials which are repelled by the magnet, that they are not going to attract toward it. For example, wood is not able to attract by the magnet. Leaf, okay, plant leaves, or what, plastic. So all these are the material which are not attracted towards the magnet. So the students, the difference comes here, that the magnet exert one kind of force which we called as the magnetism. If the substance is attracted toward the magnet, that we call as the magnetic substance, and the substance which is not meant to attract toward it, so we call it as the non-magnetic substance. For example, Fe is the magnetic substance, that is the iron nails. Okay, so that's the another property. On that base, you can divide the substance. Okay. Okay, now there is a question comes, like, why we are grouping the materials? Like, what's the point of view of grouping the material? So, my dear student, as in the very beginning of this chapter, I have already told you, like, we are having so many things, for example, in your house, and you have to shift. So, how you are going to do that? That's the one thing. But it's like it is going to be convenient to store and to study. Exactly, student. If all of these things are there, so we are sorting all of these material. For example, student, when you are going to high classes, you will come to know that we are having metals, non-metals, we are having hydrocarbons, we are having acid and bases. So that's why, student, on the basis of their different property, we have made one chapter over them, and we'll study them, so that it will be get convenient to us to study, and it will get convenient to store. For example, student, if for example, if any of the metal, for that is the copper wire, which is having the property of conductivity. Exactly. And if I keep that material in such type of condition where the electricity can be passed through it, and we can get any harm from it. So exactly, students, so why, so we have to keep those point on the basis of the property, na, that we don't have to keep such material. But at that point, I can keep any wood log or any plastic material over there. So that is why, student, the grouping of the material is very much required, depending upon their different properties. So first of all, we can store them easily, and we can study them easily. For example, now if I give you so many things: iron, wood, plastic, copper, aluminium. So okay, and what else I can give you? cushion, teddy bear, stones. If I'm giving you so many things and I'm asking you to group all of them, so you can see, student, that the iron is one of the thing. Like you can say that, ma'am, it will having the hardness, as well as that the iron box. If I talk about that, as well as it can going to be magnetic toward it, and it is having the conductivity of heat and electricity. So that's why, student, now you come to know that we have studied all of these properties. So that's why you are going to separate it out in that way. So that is why it will be easier for us to store, and it will be easier for us to study. Okay, because we are knowing all of these properties right now, so we can separate out our materials, because there are so many materials in our surrounding. Exactly. So all of these are the properties on which that you can group your material. So it's like appearance, dullness, luster, and what else? Conductivity of heat and electricity, magnetism is there, floating and sinking is there, and what else? Student solubility part is there. So that's how you can separate your material and you can group them, because it will help you to store, it will help you to study easily. So all these are the things, student, which make this chapter completely very interesting, and that's how we have completed this chapter. Fine. So, my dear students, if you have any doubt, if you have any query, or any question comes to your mind, so what you can do is you can put up your question on the public forum as well as the private forum of the Ask IITian, and that's how your question will get solved and you'll get your answer, and your chapter will is going to be completely fine with you, and you can score good marks. Okay, so keep learning from Ask IITians and keep study and watch all of the videos with very great attention. And in the last, thank you everyone.